The great state of Tennessee has been a conservative stronghold for years, and the left is working tenfold to radically change that. Thanks to organizations like Turning Point USA and young conservatives like Hannah Faulkner, the left may not get their dream of turning Tennessee into a socialist utopia. I had the honor of having Hannah on for the 14th episode of Hot Take. She gave me her insight onto how the modern day medical industry has become politicized, how the LGBTQ movement has entered almost every aspect of our lives, how homeschooling gave her a rock-solid foundation, how we need to fight for life, all life, unborn and born, and a myriad of other topics, such as the importance of the nuclear family and the 2024 election. Continue watching to see how you can be like Hannah and fight to keep your state red.
I'm Faulkner, and I'm just a 16-year-old that's passionate about truth, freedom, America, and most importantly, our Savior, Jesus Christ. And we recently hosted the Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally. Term transgender does not exist because you cannot trans your gender. Number one, it denies science, nature, reality, and just plain common sense. I mean, of course, getting social media at age 11, 12, starting to compare herself to these other girls on social media.
Welcome back to The Bridge, guys. We have a fantastic guest here, Hannah Faulkner. And instead of giving a huge intro, I'll give it to her.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I always say, like you said, my name's Hannah Faulkner, and I'm just a 16-year-old that's passionate about truth, freedom, America, and most importantly, our Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm currently the president of a Turning Point USA and Young Women for America chapter here in Rutherford County, Tennessee. And we recently hosted the Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally. And, you know, there are so many media articles going up, still to this day about how, we had this rally out of hate. We had it because we're homophobic or we're transphobic. Number one, you can't be something that doesn't exist. So, of course, we acknowledge that these people exist. But that word, that psychobabble term, transgender, does not exist because you cannot trans your gender. Number one, it denies science, nature, reality, and just plain common sense. I mean, of course, we need God. We need a Savior, Jesus Christ. But you do not need religion to just follow the science, and that is you cannot change your sex. And so we had Chloe Cole. She's an 18-year-old detransitioner going through full-blown menopause from what the medical industry has done to her. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but her story is just absolutely tragic, what happened to her. I mean, getting social media at age 11, 12, starting to compare herself to these other girls on social media and how she doesn't look like them. She's not growing, developing the way that they were. And of course, quickly the LGBTQ religion, and I call it a religion because I worship God. I worship, my Savior, and they worship their sexual morality and they worship themselves. So it's a religion of sexual morality and self-worship, quite frankly. But yeah, her story, she quickly got sucked into the LGBTQ religion. And they told her, well, if you don't feel confident in your body, then maybe you should, try to change that. Maybe you should set up a doctor's appointment and see if you have gender dysphoria. So she had a doctor's appointment. They diagnosed her with gender dysphoria and quickly put her on testosterone and puberty blockers within just a few months. And then 2 years later, at age 15, she had a double mastectomy, removing both of her healthy breasts. And a lot of these,
if I'm wrong, but they diagnosed her with gender dysphoria, but affirmed it rather than treating it.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole issue. And this is not love. They're claiming that we're the hateful ones. No, the most loving thing you can do to someone is tell them the truth. You cannot have love without truth. That's hypocrisy. And so I love these people, and that's why I'm having this rally. That's why we're having events saying that you can't change your sex, because we love you. Because statistically it shows that those that try to transition, those that try to change their sex, are more depressed and more anxiety ridden than they were prior to these surgeries. I mean, recently there's a study done in Sweden that shows that after these people attempt to change their sex, they're 19 times more likely to commit suicide. And even on the National Library of Medicine, it says that transgender people are more suicidal than the general population, and it seems to occur during every stage of transitioning. So this is not love. This is hate. This is an experiment on our children. I mean, I got involved. I always say it starts in the home. First off, it starts with your family, because without the nuclear family, that's something I believe is the greatest issue facing our nation, is the brokenness of the nuclear family. Because if you don't have a nuclear family between one man and one woman, you have no society. Society collapses, and we've seen that all throughout human history. I mean, God destroyed the earth. He flooded the earth because of sexual immorality. He destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of sexual immorality. And he's going to do it again to America if enough godly men do not take a stand and lead their families and say enough. But yeah, I believe it all starts in the family. It starts in the home. And so I'm very grateful to have parents that have just raised my siblings and I up in a home where we're talking about these issues. We're talking about this spiritual battle, this good versus evil battle that we are in. And so I remember when I was like 9 or 10 watching the news, and I was like, man, this isn't necessarily the most exciting thing, but it has to be beneficial to me in some way, shape, or form. And so over just the course of my family talking about these issues, I started to develop a passion for the truth. And around the age of 13, it was totally a God thing. A lady named Cassidy Riley came to my homeschool tutorial that I was attending, and she was just talking about Turning Point, their mission, and how we can get involved. And so I started a Turning Point USA chapter at the age of 13, and we had a few members. It wasn't anything big. But we just kept persevering. We kept, having meetings and events and small things. And then we ended up having a capitalism versus socialism debate last year, it was so funny. I mean, the guy came, poor guy, he did not have any backing. And that's the thing, with the socialism as a whole, every society that started as socialism, it either turned into communism or it completely failed.
Yep.
And so it was an interesting debate. But my sister, about 11 months ago, was paralyzed in a freak swimming accident. It paralyzed her from the chest down at age, she's eight years old now, but it paralyzed her from the chest down. And so we were in about 6 different medical facilities, and I'm still continuing to be in some facilities to this day. But during our time in these facilities, we were completely bombarded with the LGBTQ religious cult. I mean, it was everywhere. There were doctors coming in with the pins, the Black Lives Matter pins, the pronoun pins. I mean, there were signs everywhere endorsing the entirety of the LGBTQ cult. And about this time, we started to see the politicians and these influencers and these activists exposing these hospitals performing these surgeries, these mutilation surgeries on minors. And so I really felt the Lord. I was like, Lord, I want to do something. What can I do? And so I felt the Lord calling me to host a Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally. And so that's the rally we hosted. We ended up hosting it like 4 months later, January 28th of this year. And we had about 800 attendees, 200 protesters. I mean, it was phenomenal. Yeah. Total spiritual warfare. I mean, complete good versus evil. I've never seen anything like that. Until, we had the rally, but it was great. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I mean, I'm just traveling the country, speaking, again, on the greatest issue that I believe is facing our nation, and that's the brokenness of the nuclear family. But then tying it in with a bunch of different issues, because there are so many issues, there are factors that are playing into the brokenness of the nuclear family. We have the LGBTQ religion, we've got media, we've got Hollywood, and we, quite frankly, have the government. We have the United States government pushing this religion onto the people. It's a state-sponsored religion, as I like to call it. And I mean, we left England nearly 300 years ago to get away from a state-sponsored religion, to get away from the religious persecution. And here we are in 2023, where the government is persecuting, where they're punishing those that do not submit to their ideologies and to their beliefs. And so it's scary what's happening, but we just have to keep taking a stand and speaking the truth no matter where we're at.
Oh, 100%. I respect a lot of the ways you stated that. A lot of people, I've struggled with it in the past, being open on your views on the LGBTQ community, but not coming across as too abrupt. Now, you mentioned you were homeschooled. Correct? Did I hear you say that?
Yes, I was homeschooled.
How has that played into your political beliefs and your activism and things like that?
Yeah, so I'll say, I actually went to kindergarten. I went to kindergarten, and I was definitely not the most liked student because I definitely my beliefs. I remember bringing church cards, just invitations to church, and got shut down, because I was posing my religious beliefs onto the other students. But if you're a Muslim, you can bring in your cards, So definitely some Christian persecution going on there. But my favorite teachers were PE and art. And both of those teachers were homosexuals. So as a 5-year-old, and it was blatant. I mean, they had pictures, they had signs all over their walls that they were gay and lesbian. And so as a 5-year-old, my parents had to explain to me that my favorite teachers, were living in sexually immoral lifestyles. And so that was when my dad was like, all right, this is the final straw. She's constantly getting persecuted for her beliefs. We're going to pull her out and we're going to homeschool her. And so that's kind of what led to me being homeschooled. But you said, like, does me being homeschooled play into, taking a stand? And I will say that so many people that are homeschooled choose not to be in the fight because they're like, oh, it doesn't affect me. No, it does affect you because these are the future generations. These are your children. And because you failed to take a stand now, you have blood on your hands for the future generations. And because I'm homeschooled, it makes me want to take a stand even more to see the brokenness of the educational system, to see the broken that's happening all across our country. That's what leads me to take a stand. And my faith, most importantly, like, we're called to act. We're called to be the light in the darkness. I love when people say that politics and religion are supposed to be separate, that that politics and religion are not together. But that's not true at all. I mean, look at the entire Old Testament. It's all politics and religion. And so I always say, because we believe this lie, because we believed that politics and religion are to be separated, the Satan is absolutely having a heyday, getting his hand into every facet of our society and perverting it because we're blind. We think, Satan is in his hand. He has his hand in everything, absolutely everything. And so that's why we as believers are called to be in that public square, to be that light, in the public square. So, yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head with many homeschoolers thinking it's not something that they have to focus on. And I think it goes beyond homeschoolers. The church abroad. Rob Cross, he's a guy running for Congress from this congressional district here in Maine. And he was talking about some of the churches he went to, and they might let him set a table up, but they wouldn't let him speak. And some of the discussions he had with the leadership boards with these churches, their main concern was they didn't want to offend their congregations. And that right there is a blatant example of exactly what you were talking about. The church being too afraid to speak, being generally dead silent, saying that politics has no place in the church. And to an extent, I agree that maybe church shouldn't be a mega rally. But at the same time, if you have a flock that's not well educated, people used to say politics could be separated from culture. They've become one and the same. You need a body of believers, a flock that's well educated on those issues. So I respect that quite a bit.
No, totally. And I mean, we have to also recognize our politicians as spiritual leaders. I mean, everybody in the Bible, King David, Saul, they were all spiritual leaders. I mean, Donald Trump is not a pastor. Ron DeSantis is not a pastor, but they are spiritual leaders, and we have to recognize them as that. I mean, they're not perfect. And number two, like you said, it's not supposed to be like a MAGA rally. It's not supposed to be something big, but the church is the ones that are called. We're called as the church to influence the public square. And because we've taken ourselves out, we're not influencing the public square. The public square, the world is influencing the church. Exactly. And so that's where we're at, and it's sad to see. But yeah, we have to get the church back into the public square. And like you said, a lot of pastors aren't bringing in politicians, or they're not talking about these issues because they're afraid they're going to offend someone. Well, Jesus didn't come, to bring peace to the world. He even said that he came with a sword. He came to divide a mother against their daughter, a father against their own children. And so he didn't come to bring peace. He came to bring a sword and truth. Truth causes division.
It hurts.
Yeah, it hurts.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
You hit the nail on the head with quite a bit of that. You keep going back to the core of truth and where that comes from. And, I think it was Joy Behar on The View a while ago said that Jesus would have been one of the head fighters in the LGBTQ community, all in the name of being loving. And this is something you mentioned at the beginning, where people think it's hateful to say something against the LGBTQ community. Yet, if you are careful with how you present it, and you are based in loving confidence and truth, may it hurt those individuals? Potentially. But you're getting them closer to a step of the end goal of being set free.
Yeah.
And if you've been living a life of sin, coming away from that, breaking away from your comfort zone, that will be painful. But if you're willing to go to the narrow road, you're going to set yourself up for success.
Well, and I'm sure you've heard that Jesus ate with sinners, right? You've heard that, well, Jesus ate with sinners. Well, the thing is, Jesus ate with repentant sinners. He sat around repentant sinners, not the fair. He even said, "You vipers, you brood of vipers, you religious people, you the Pharisees." Talking about those that feel that they are too good for God. It's like a lot of these gay people that are coming out. And listen, I love gay people. I have gay friends. Like, I love everybody, and I'm saying these things out of love. But I've heard this so much from the gay community that that kind of there's a lot of self-righteousness that they're better than the transgenders. But it's just one sin against another. I mean, it's just one morally debased sin against another morally debased sin. And so, yes, no, Jesus sat around sinners that recognized their sin and repented. They turned from it. The gays against groomers feel that they are too good to turn from their sin. And I'm going to say that. Listen, I love, like you said, I love gay people. Like, I do. I truly do. But the entirety of like the Gays Against Groomers organization, I disagree with it because first off, we're all groomers. My parents are grooming us to be warriors for truth, and to fight for the truth. If you are a gay person, you are passively grooming a child to think that it's okay to be gay. If I put someone on stage and he's cheating on his wife, I'm grooming the crowd to think it's okay to cheat on your wife. Same thing as I put a Gays Against Groomers person on stage. I'm grooming the crowd to think it's okay to be gay. Sure, it's not okay to be transgender, but you're okay if you're gay. So that's kind of my like position on that. Like I love that everybody can take a stand. I'm totally fine with you taking a stand. I think that's great. We need as many people as possible to unite, but I'm not going to, accept your lifestyle. And so like that whole argument, and I hear that so much, is that Jesus ate with sinners. No, Jesus ate with repentant sinners. So that's key. Turn from your sin. I mean, even like the he who is without sin cast the first stone. And then he says, go and sin no more. Turn from that.
Okay,
sin.
so we've discussed the LGBTQ community quite a bit. I have a question. Were you at CPAC earlier this year or no?
I was not. I wasn't able to make it, unfortunately.
So at CPAC, there was a drag queen going around, and she called herself Lady MAGA. If you saw that at a massive conservative conference, what would your opinion be on that?
Wow, I honestly did not know that. So she was like it's a he. It's a he.
Yes, technically a he.
Oh,
sorry.
So it is a man.
Yeah, talk about grooming. I said a she and didn't even think about it. My word.
Oh no, like that's I have a big, belief on that.
By pure assumption and from what I could tell. There was a lot of makeup, we'll just put it that way.
Yeah, no, I completely disagree, and I think that's disgusting that they would have that as like portraying that image there. Yeah, I didn't even know about that. Wow.
It wasn't, I don't think CPAC endorsed, but the individual was walking around the hallways and taking photos of people, and he, technically, as far as we know, I think a lot of people saw it as an opportunity to be a, quote, moderate and try to get along with the LGBTQ community. But there was a meme I saw, I think it was on Instagram or Twitter, and said, this is why CPAC's numbers were down this year. And those who were in the room, you either had people that were against it or thought it was a good chance for moderation. But I saw it as we're just weakening our values. I don't think we should go up to the person and say, get the heck out of here. But going up and taking photos and things like that, I don't know. That's a risky road to be on. It's like, did we cross the line? I don't know. But we're surely getting close to it.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of, I hear this so often, is that we're supposed to unite with, Democrats. We need to unite with the other side. And there is no uniting. 210 out of 212 Democrats have voted against a bill that would protect babies who survive an attempted abortion. They had voted to leave those babies on the table to die. They vote for men to enter women's bathrooms, for men to invade women's sports in their privacy. They advocate for homelessness, for drug addiction. There's no uniting with a party that's advocating for death. And so, no, that sickens me that they, would I guess not, like you said, they didn't endorse it, but that's just sad to me that conservatives as a whole are endorsing or trying to side with that lifestyle. So it's very
No.
sad. But that's the thing. We will never win until we call it what it is. First off, William Thomas is not a transgender woman. Dylan Mulvaney is not a transgender woman. They are men who call themselves transgender women, but the word woman will never be placed with the word man, and vice versa, because you cannot trans your gender. And it all goes back to following the science. It's just plain common sense. All of these issues, I can't even believe that we are debating. I cannot believe we've come to a point in society where we're having events saying that there are only two genders, that a baby in the womb is a life, that you shouldn't murder your unborn child. That men shouldn't be entering women's bathrooms in sports. I cannot believe it. It's just mind-boggling to me that we are even talking about these issues. But it really just shows how debased our society has become. And so, yeah, we've got to call it what it is. We've got to stop cowering down to the mob, to the woke mob. We've got to stop being afraid of it. And here's the thing. I would rather die knowing I stood for something.
Yep.
And be, offend a few people than die knowing I didn't stand for anything because I was too afraid of being called judgmental or being, offensive to someone. I'd rather stand for the truth than to not stand for something at all. And so that's the thing. People are just way too scared. I mean, one of our founding fathers said, "I hope you will make good use of your freedom. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it." And so not only is it a slap in the face to the men and women who gave their lives, who shed blood, sweat, and tears for us to enjoy the freedoms we have today, but it's a slap in the face to our founding fathers who worked endlessly for us to have the freedoms we have today. So it's crazy what's happening, but we've just got to take a stand. We've got to stand on principle, even if we stand alone, just like John Adams said, and just keep fighting.
Now, I discussed moderation, and you brought up a term, unity. During the last election cycle, out of the thousands of doors I knocked, there was a phrase I started to use more and more. I used it almost daily towards the end of the cycle. I basically talked about unity is a term that politicians use to get elected, but I really wish the term didn't exist for the most part in politics. But civility and discourse, that's something we can achieve. I think moderation and unity, we're way too focused on that. You mentioned some pro-life legislation and Democrats blocking it by rather huge margins and things like that. Well, that happened right here in Maine. LD 1619 was a bill that would have greatly expanded abortion access, and sadly it passed. And I remember it would have been back in either April or May. There was a huge rally. Granted, last election cycle, we got blown out of the water. Over 1,000 people showed up, filled the Maine State House. On all 3-4 floors, however many floors that building has, all you could hear was worship music the entire day. Over 600 people testified. I remember testifying on behalf of myself and the GOP, saying, we offer you a chance for true bipartisanship. The bill passed, and only a couple Democrats decided not to. It was almost a unanimous vote for it on the Democrat side of the aisle.
Wow.
Absolutely insane.
And that's the thing. Like, there is no uniting with a party that stands for mutilating children, that stands for murdering unborn children. I mean, there really is no uniting. These are just common sense issues. It's not like states' rights like it was, 100 years ago. It's life and death, literally, that we're debating on. And so, no, the Democratic Party is the party of America last. You don't see any Democrats running around wearing American flags, chanting USA. No, because they love the benefits of America. They love the freedoms that we have in America, but they hate what got us here. And what got us here is God. It is biblical truth and biblical values, and they hate that. It stirs them up. It gets them angry because they hate God. And so, no, you gotta keep fighting. But no, there is no uniting with the Democratic Party. As much as we want to unite with them, there is no uniting on these issues. Does it matter? Is it a life? Yes or no?
Yeah. Okay.
Doesn't matter. Is it mutilation? Yes or no? Stop trying to deflect from the argument. Stop calling me names. Stop calling me a bigot, a homophobic. Now let's get back to the real issue. Is it a life
100%.
or not? So.
Okay, so we've covered the LGBTQ community and those issues, pro-life values and things like that. You mentioned just being younger and kind of your earlier days, but what really got you started? Like, what, for me, it was the pandemic. I mean, I knew I was going to vote conservative in the future, but when the world shut down and we all of a sudden were all at home on Zoom meetings, I went, oh gosh, something's wrong. Yeah. And so what really kind of pulled the trigger and said, yeah, I need to get active?
Yeah, so I mean, really, when my sister was in the hospital about 11 months ago, and I just felt the Lord calling me to host the rally, and then the Lord was bringing me speaking opportunities and just putting me on, radio shows. I mean, everything was just totally a God thing. Still to this day, every opportunity has been just totally a God thing. So it really, I mean, I've always been passionate about the truth. Like you said, like you've always been, you've always known the truth. Have been aware of the truth. But standing for it to a different extent. And so, yeah, really just seeing what the medical industry is doing to Americans. That's really when my eyes were opened and I was like, whoa, like this is actually happening. This is a war on children. And what am I going to do? Am I going to sit back or am I going to really take a stand? And so that's kind of what got me going.
So you would have been what, 14 or 15 when that kind of started?
15. Yes. I just 15. Turned 16.
So you are a sophomore or junior?
So I'm going to be a senior in high school, but I'm doing a dual enrollment associate's degree track. So I'm actually a sophomore in college with Liberty University also.
That's what we call homeschooling.
There are many perks to it for sure.
So I'm putting the time frame together. It's actually quite similar to me. Now, you got active with Turning Point. You've done some rallies. So would you consider yourself an activist or a public speaker or a happy median? Where would you put yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just an activist. I do a lot of public speaking, but I really just try to just stay focused on the mission and whatever the Lord has for me. So I don't know, like I am a public speaker and I'm an activist for different issues and different topics, but really whatever the Lord has for me during different seasons, I guess I'm just following and trying to see what he has for me. So.
No, 100%. Now, I mentioned the pandemic earlier. What were your opinions on that? For many of the people that I'm close with, they weren't necessarily politically active, but especially for the people my age. I went to Bangor Christian for the last 3 years of my high school career. And so many people started to say, oh, something's got to change. People that didn't care before started to care. What were your opinions on that?
I mean, it exposed so much of the deep state. It exposed so much of the corruption going on with our government, with the educational system. Parents really started to get a glimpse to what their children are learning in schools, and what these teachers are teaching their children. And we really saw whole Hollywood was propagating all of these lies, and parents really started, parents specifically, and even Gen Z, really started to have their eyes opened to what was happening in this world, and like, whoa, it was a shocker. Like, okay, this is happening. It's really gone this far. It's time for me to take a stand. So really, the pandemic definitely opened a lot of doors for people to take a stand, and different opportunities for people to take a stand.
No, 100%. Now, you're from Tennessee, correct?
Yes.
So how strict were the COVID regulations down there?
It actually wasn't bad at all. No, and I'll be honest, I race motocross. And so I stayed during most of the pandemic. I was actually living in Georgia at a training facility. So I guess for me, everything was going great, during obviously we had some issues, and some restrictions and things we couldn't do, lockdowns, but I was just riding a dirt bike every day, training for a national race. So for me, it wasn't too bad. But I think what affected us the most was in 2021. That's when we saw a big piece at least from my family. But in Tennessee, everything was great. And I will say this, a lot of people think Tennessee is very, very conservative. And we have a lot of conservative, great elected officials here in Tennessee. But going back to being apathetic and to being complacent, I just a few weeks ago, my siblings and I were swimming at a local community center here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, about 35 minutes outside of Nashville. When we went into the women's locker room to find a man posing as a woman undressing in the women's locker room. And so yes, Tennessee is conservative, but we were also just topping the charts and performing gender mutilation surgeries on minors. We have men entering women's bathrooms. We have pornographic books in our libraries and in our schools. So we aren't as conservative as people think we are. And yes, again, we're conservative. It's great. But we're going to be just like California or worse if we continue to have this attitude of apathy and complacency and just sitting back thinking, God, we're not like California, because that's the way that's how California got to that point, is because Christians were like, oh, thank God I'm not like this country. And so again, Satan is having a heyday. He's getting his hand into every facet of our state and perverting it, twisting it, because we have had our head stand thinking we're not like California. So I'm warning a lot of Tennesseans. I'm like, hey, like it's getting pretty bad. Like, we've got to take a stand. We've got to stop acting like these things aren't happening, because they are.
Yep. Okay, so you talked about warning Tennesseans about basically what's coming.
Yeah.
Becoming like Maine, to be honest. Maine used to be a much more of a conservative stronghold 50 years ago. But slowly but surely, we become a purple state where we might occasionally get a conservative governor. And there was no excuse to not have a red wave last cycle, except for some of the GOP mistakes and our candidates going squishy. But even then, the Maine people didn't see that we needed some red leadership. Tennessee will become Maine if people don't wake up. Now, do you think you're becoming a purple state now, or how long do you think it is until that happens if people don't step up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could be fully blue in less, and I say fully blue, and that's discounting, like, we could have all red, I mean, most, actually, I think, we've held a majority for, I think, since, I can't even remember how long we've held the majority. Like, you can have all Republicans in office and hold all Republican red state, but still be blue in value and the things that, because we have a lot of Republicans. I mean, even in Rutherford County, we have so many Republicans in Rutherford County, but they're all so weak and cowardice that they're not willing to take a stand against these simple issues like allowing men into women's bathrooms. And they're just not loud enough. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I really hope it doesn't happen. I hope that, we can prolong it as long as possible, but we could be fully blue within less than 10 years if we don't take a stand.
Okay, so back to the warning different Tennesseans. Have you noticed something that at least I've personally noticed here in Maine? People see individuals like myself, another lady named Anna Gary, who's working with Turning Point, Reagan Paul, a representative here. A bunch of the younger people here, they look at us and say, all right, you're the future, we support you, and then they forget about it. So do people come to you, say, we support you, and then they do absolutely nothing, assuming you can do the work on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of support from Turning Point USA and some of the GOP. I think for me, the biggest issue is the church. I definitely have a very, very lack of support, a large lack of support from the church, which again is very sad to me, because we have all these churches over here, saying, we want you to take a stand. We want you to take a stand on these issues. Let's stop being weak. Let's not be like other churches and cower down to the mob. But then when they do have people in their congregation like myself who take a stand, they're like, oh, nope, that's going to hurt our 501c3. The IRS is going to come after us. We can't do anything with you. So the biggest thing for me is the church. That's what I've had a lot of trouble with, is getting the church civically engaged and involved.
No, 100%. The church is definitely falling short. It's kind of like what I mentioned with Rob Cross and his campaign. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and follow @thebridge_Maine on all socials. Once again, that's @thebridge_Maine on all socials. While you're at it, go follow Hannah on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube @HannahFaulkner1776. Once again, that's @HannahFaulkner1776. I will have all these links in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.